It's not illegal, but it's not wise. And the reason is you have a vetting process that's supposed to happen. And the purpose is to make sure that the people who have access to the information can be trusted. I don't know why Elon Musk is being trusted so much to police himself. Just because you have money doesn't mean you can't do anything that's bad for our country. So there has to be some kind of vetting process that happens. I don't know if we can say he should, that it's illegal because he's acting as an advisor, right? He's not an official federal capacity or he doesn't have a position. He's an advisor.
He's a special government employee, which is sort of almost like a little bit of a
quasi.
It's
a
gray area.
But it's one of those things that it's going to get thing by thing tested one by one. It's going to be a very slow process to find out what is happening and whether any of it actually passes legal muster, because there are rules that Congress has set, actually at some point, about how the government works, about who's supposed to have access to what, and about what the roles of federal employees are.
Well, I mean, I would love someone to come into my law firm and look at where the waste is and how it can function more smoothly. And as a law firm, you're in a little bit of a unique position, but when you're involved with the Treasury Department, you're also in a unique position. I got to be honest with you, Abby. If I had an Elon Musk type come into my little law firm, I would have them sign some kind of a non-disclosure form, a confidentiality form. It's just good practice. I'm not saying he would have to go through, Senate clearance, but there's got to be some degree of a checks and balances. I don't buy the fact that he's looking to enrich himself. The guy's worth $500 billion. I mean, at some point, every human being is saturated.
But there are
so I don't
definitely
think
conflicts of interest. I mean, that's not debatable. He has government contracts. He has competitors who have government contracts who he wants to box out. I mean, the conflicts are there.
Well, we're in a very legally gray area. A lot of this comes down to, as you said, do the enforcement mechanisms, Congress, for example, or the courts actually have the ability to step in, and do they need to? Like the power of the purse being in Congress, many of these programs that are being slashed and that there hasn't actually, that have been appropriated by Congress, if nobody's enforcing and stepping up to challenge that, I don't know that that's actually going to matter. In the courts, we've seen them step in briefly with the federal aid freeze, but I don't suspect that they're going to go line items through by through everything that he's come in and cut or decided to streamline. So and there is something to, there's wisdom in the Trump administration by the lack of transparency around it. I don't know that people would know where to begin if they're trying to be outside watchdogs on what is being cut.
So not illegal. You don't like the politics of it. I'll give you the other side. This is radical transparency on these USAID grants and other parts of the government that typically operate in an opaque fashion. And plenty of law degrees here. I'll give you the political view. The American people elected Donald Trump because they thought he was going to be a sledgehammer against this government and against the out-of-control bureaucracy, and Elon Musk is the instrument of the destruction. And there is nothing bad about the politics of this right now, about going through the government and reporting to the American people, did you know your money's going here? Did you know your money's going there? It's all upside for Trump.
Reproach where he shouldn't even be questioned about. Yeah.
He's questioned by his boss, the President of the United States.
Is he?
Yeah.
No, but
they don't even know what he's doing. Yeah, that's the problem.
Trump said he would have authorization to do what he needed to do.
Here's what the New York Times is reporting. One Trump official who was not authorized to speak publicly said, Mr. Musk was widely seen as operating with a level of autonomy that almost no one can control.
I think
there's no one that you can say that about.
Yes, right. No, nor should you. Which Absolutely. Is right. Nor should you. I think I hear you. Transparency. Donald Trump won the election. I can acknowledge that. What I think people are not connecting the dots on is the trickle-down effect of, y'all love trickle-down, right? Of how this happens. You close a government agency, people lose their jobs. That impacts their employment, whether they can feed themselves. That agency funds nonprofits abroad, but also domestic. Those people can't then do their job. That affects people in those states, red states and blue states, the people that those nonprofits help. That I don't think is what the American people actually signed up for. And I think that it's early. It's still, 15 days in? It's 3 weeks in. And so I don't think the impact of what Elon Musk is doing is being directly felt by the American people. But give it 6 weeks.
It's starting to be. I mean, there was a report out of Virginia, community health centers were shutting down because their funding stopped. No one can seem to explain why that is, but it's because basically Elon Musk has said for a wide swath of the government, just turn the whole thing off.
I think that Scott is right on the politics in this moment, but I would completely disagree that there's transparency. The White House should come out and simply list, these are the programs that are being slashed. This is the amount, this is what they serve, this is why they're duplicative or unnecessary or waste and fraudulent and abusive. They're not showing us that. So I mean, I have friends who've been laid off in USAID in India. They don't know why. They don't know if their mission's being shuttered or if it's being streamlined and folded into the State Department. These are things I think it would really benefit the Trump White House. Put out some fact sheets, explain what you're doing.
They don't want to,
Because it's generally
they don't want to.
popular to shrink government.
That's why they did the federal freezing of funds the way they did, is because Bannon said this from the beginning. This is a strategy. This is their political strategy.
But they have the right to have that strategy. I agree
But
with
throw
Scott.
it-
You're getting a
throw it-
lot
throw
of
it.
kudos today. We agree with you on the policy. Trump has the right to set his policy and decide what's important, where he wants to slash. But to have somebody just running around the government that hasn't been vetted, hasn't went through any clearance or anything like that, and they have access to everyone's information, to things they shouldn't have access to, there has to be some oversight of Elon Musk.
One of the other things we're learning this week, this is according to the New York Times, the CIA sent the White House an unclassified email with the names of some employees. This sounds mundane, I guess, but it's the CIA, and some of those employees are doing sensitive jobs. Some of those employees are targeted by foreign governments. Why?
I don't know. I mean, I hope they're following all the safety and security protocols for the people that are in the clandestine service. I think at some juncture, though, you all have to realize that nobody in the United States feels like anybody could give them a full accounting of where all this money goes. We're $30-something trillion in debt. We spend more money than we bring in. This has been going on and on for years. Both parties say they're going to do something about it, and then we meet about it, and we have committees, and we fight about it, and we have elections, and no one ever does anything. And then Trump shows up and unleashes Elon Musk on the federal government. And finally, people are like, well, maybe if we break a few eggs, we might turn up a few omelets here. And I just think the politics of this are going to give them a lot of leash in Washington, because they're going to end up turning over things that everyone's going to agree, oh, yeah, that was really
But
stupid.
Elon Musk also doesn't know where those $1 trillion. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you are in charge of something.
But he's supposed to be finding out, right?
But
Isn't
he's
that
not.
his job?
But he's
Well, how do we
not.
know what he's doing 2 weeks in? And by the way,
We don't.
I'm having
That's-
deja vu. Didn't we do this with Jared Kushner 8 years ago? Wasn't he in the Oval Office? Wasn't he
Yeah, but
doing all?
he
And he had
wasn't
no
doing
security.
anything.
Jared
He
wasn't
had
doing
no-
anything like this,
he
to
didn't-
be clear.
anything like
Jared was a
this.
colleague. He was
sitting-
very clear what he was
Listen,
doing.
I'm a Jared fan, but he was sitting in the White House next to the President of the United States. He was in the thick of it with no clearance whatsoever, at least initially.
But keep in mind, right now we're talking about USAID, which we all care about. The average American doesn't know what it is, doesn't care what the mission is, whether they should or shouldn't. When this becomes the Department of Education or Health and Human Services, and it could impact goods, services, and day-to-day things Americans care about, then they're going to want more of an accounting of what is being slashed and why.